What's up guys, it's Z here, welcome back to Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck of the Day. Today we're doing an update on Evil Twins, a deck that I have been waiting to profile for such a long time, but I figured that since in every single set we were getting cards for this deck, that I would just wait until we got all of the support, and until further notice, we actually now have the complete version of the deck, and I'm so happy that Konami printed exactly what they did, just because the deck was very promising from the very beginning when it was released, but it just had major flaws that Konami tried to fix with all the new cards that we have, and I think now that the deck, even as a pure version, it is very competitive because before people were just trying to mix it with stuff like Eldritch to make it better, and it was very understandable because of how much damage the deck lacked, but now it has ways to do damage quickly and finish games. So now, without further ado, I present to you the updated, the finalized Evil Twin deck profile. So for the monsters, first of all, we have 3 copies of Live Twin Kill. Now for the starters, you need to just max them out because they're the ones that you just want to normal summon or either special summon with a spell card, and when they're summoned, they special summon the other name from the deck. They don't have to special summon exactly the other name, they can just summon the extenders from the deck as well, which is very huge, especially because one of them actually has a useful effect in the graveyard, so you need to summon this more often than not. So these cards are the cards you won't be seeing in your opening hand as quickly as possible. 3 copies of Live Twin Lila, pretty much the same, getting your Kill from the deck. For the extenders, we play 1 copy of Live Twin Kill Frost and 1 copy of Live Twin Lila Treat. So the reason these cards are one-offs is because they are extenders, but they are very specific extenders. So what I mean by that is that they are not simple extenders where you can just special summon from your hand no matter what you have on field. You have to have the other name on the field in order to special summon them. So if you play multiples, they create weird situations where you just have the extender, but you also have the same name. So for example, if you draw the Kill extender and you start with Kill in your hand and you summon Kill, it gets Asked, gets Veiler or something, and then the extender doesn't work because you don't have the name you need on the field. So these cards I think are perfect one-offs just because they're searchable, and thank God they're searchable now, because before when we used to play Silent Mining in the deck, these 2 cards are not Cyber's monsters, so you were not able to search them, but now being searchable with a continuous spell, I think it's perfectly fine to play them both at one. They can work, and Kill is the only one that has a decent effect in the graveyard. Basically, you can banish it and get a shared right effect once, which is okay. The other one has a battle effect, which is completely irrelevant, but Kill is decent. So yeah, I don't think you need to play more than one of them. Next, we have 1 copy of Evil Twin Kill and Lila. So this card is here mainly because of Sunny, the new Link 4 monster, and this is why, because you can banish it from the graveyard to send Evil Twin monster from your hand, deck, or face up on the field to the grave to send 1 card on the field to the graveyard. If you are not running this monster, then you are forced to send one of your Link monsters from your face up on the field to the graveyard. Sometimes you want to do that just because you want them to get to the graveyard so you can bring them back the other one, but sometimes you don't have the comfort of doing it, or you want to use this effect before you commit to the field. So this is why you need to play this 1 card in your deck in order to be able to use that effect freely. It is not the best card in the world. Its effect is basically an evenly matched at home effect, because your opponent gets to keep 2 cards, they do not even get banished, but they go to the graveyard. But it's very easy to summon because you can summon from the graveyard as well, and it's another monster that can push for a game, because when you have both the links in the graveyard, it gets 4400 attack, and how you summon it is by attributing your links when this card is in your field or in your graveyard or in your hand, so you get a free body on the field. So it's not the worst card, but now it's very, very worth running. Before you didn't really play this, but now with Sunny's effect, you need to play this just to make her a little bit better. We play 3 copies of Parallel Exceed. When you don't start with a spell card that locks you into Evil Twins, it's very easy to use this card because the Link monsters lock you into Fiends after you use their effects. So when you summon the first Link, you use Parallel Exceed, you make your rank 4, and then you go into your Link's effect to get back a monster from the graveyard, and by the time you're locked into Fiend monsters, you don't really care, you've already used your Parallel Exceed. And Baguska is a card that has a lot of synergy with the deck, because aside from Exceed getting you 2 monsters on the field, everything else after your first summon is going to be a Link monster. So you can freely play after summoning a Baguska, which is something that I think any deck can do, just like Salamangreat should be able to use that, just because Baguska against certain matchups is an auto-win. So this is why Parallel Exceed, I think, provides the deck a little bit more ceiling that it has, because when you're trying to play the deck pure, then your plays are very limited. Yes, the deck is very consistent now, but the deck still doesn't have too much to do unless you incorporate other engines, but since this is more of a pure version, I think Parallel Exceed helps a lot. Now, I do play a lot of hand drops in the deck because this is one of those decks like Tri-Brigades where you have a lot of 1-card combos that even with 1 card, you can basically do your entire play. So in decks like this, it's very optimal to play as many hand drops as possible because they do not clog your hand and they just help you get turns back in case you get interrupted, or when you go second, it helps you play through boards that are not very scary, because they would be if you didn't have any hand drops. So we have 3 copies of Asp Blossom, of course, 3 copies of Effect Veiler, 3 copies of Impermanence, and 3 copies of Gamma with a 1 copy of Driver. Now, I do like Gamma only in decks where you can activate its effect going first as well, and the deck has a continuous spell that searches monsters, a spell card that specials from the deck, and a spell card that searches spells and traps. So it's very tempting to ash one of those cards, especially if people don't know exactly what the deck does, which is going to be the case especially in the beginning if people don't really play this deck, because what you should be doing with this deck is keep your hand drop for the normal summon, but this is risky sometimes too because there are extenders that get you to another monster on the field, so it's very difficult to hand trap this deck. The only hand trap that really kills this deck is basically Nibiru, but Nibiru is a very impactful hand trap in general. So yeah, Gamma, you can activate this effect going first when your opponent ashes one of your spell cards, and you can go into a Mask Arena, which is another really good card you can summon in the deck, because when you use your Link monsters, you want to send another one to the graveyard with Mask Arena to go for maybe a Unicorn, maybe for Underworld Goddess, and then bring the monster you linked away back with the other name, so you can get its effect too. For the spell cards, we have 3 copies of Live Twin Sunny Snitch. Now, this card, I think, solved the second biggest issue of the deck, which was playing Signet Mine. Before, you had to do it just because you needed more searches. So, problem with mining was that it could not search the extenders, and that it had a cost to discard. So basically what this card does is that it's a continuous spell that on activation, it searches you a Live Twin monster. So not only doesn't have a cost, but it searches you your extenders as well, which are not Cyber's monster, and it also has a light stage type of effect that every time your opponent summons a monster, then you gain 200 life points and inflict 200 damage to your opponent. So this deck is really good at winning in time as well, which is something extra. So yeah, this card I think is absolutely fantastic for the deck. 3 copies of Live Twin Home. This is the extender that special summons from the deck. It does have a cost to discard a card, and it locks you into Evil Twins. Now, it doesn't really matter because when you're using this card, it's absolutely the last resort. So you're going to be using this card if your opponent interrupts you. Otherwise, you can keep it in your hand. It's a quick play, so you can even activate it during your opponent's turn. If they clear your board, you can activate this during the end phase to get another monster on the field, potentially even 2 if you summon Kisikil or Lila on a clear board. So yeah, this card, especially if you have Exceed, you should be very wary about using, but if your opponent disrupts you, then you have no other choice. But it doesn't really matter because if that scenario comes up, you can just discard Exceed for the cost. 3 copies of Secret Password. This is the card that adds the Live Twins or Evil Twin spells and traps from your deck to your hand. Pretty good. Also, it can add an Evil Twin monster, which I don't think you ever do. It can add the big monster, but you don't really want to add that. You just want to send it from the deck to the graveyard with Sunny Snake with your Sunny, so you can get it back on the grave. 2 copies of Pot of Avarice. I find this deck very similar to how Sky Striker used to be, and I'm really sure that if you had a card like Hercules base, the deck would be a little bit better, but the problem is that you don't, so you need to play cards like this, which is okay because yeah, this card's unsearchable, but it's a good card. Even you can activate sometimes even turn 1 because you stack your graveyard so fast. So I think it's a really good card to have because the moment you run out of Link monsters, then this is basically the moment you cannot play. With Sunny, this situation comes a little bit later than before because Sunny just brings back both the Link monsters from the graveyard, but still I think you need to play at least 2 copies of Avarice in my opinion just to have a chance, because this deck, if you don't OTK your opponent quickly with cards like the Sunny and the Evil Twin boss monster, then you're going to go for a grind game, so you need to have cards like this. 1 Monster Reborn. Sunny just makes this card so much better because just bring her back, then tribute her to get back both Lila and Kisikil, you get both effects, is just absolutely amazing. And 1 copy of Call by the Grave to just play more hand traps. You can play Crossout if you want with Nibiru, which is something I was considering, but I'm still a bit iffy about main decking Crossout in anything, so this is why I think that I should not be doing it. But of course, other people have other opinions. If you think it's needed, if you think it's good, then of course go ahead and do it, because you do have a lot of free room in the deck, play a lot of hand traps. If you want to play Crossout, what I would do is I would start cutting numbers on hand traps, make them 2-offs from 3-offs, play Nibiru as well in the main deck, and then play 3 copies of Crossout as well. So if you want to play that, then this is what you should be doing. And for the traps, we have 1 copy of Evil Twin Present. So these 2 cards are 1-offs. I'm going to show you now that are just searchable with Secret Password, and these are basically removal and another revival card. So this card is a removal, not exactly removal, but it's basically disruption. So it's basically a switcheroo kind of effect. You give them one of your monsters and you take one of their own. It also has another effect that you can target a set spell and trap card your opponent controls and shuffle it into the deck, which against matchups like Altergeist, Subterrors, and other decks like that, then it's going to be very useful because it puts it back into the deck, which is basically the best type of removal you can get in the game right now. And we have 1 copy of Evil Twin Challenge. This is basically a Call of the Haunted for Kisikil or Lila. You just special summon them, and it also lets you link summon immediately if you want to. Usually you're not going to be doing that because you bring back a link anyway, so all you're going to do is use that link's effect to bring back the other link and get the effect as well, so you don't really need to use that second effect, but it's there in case it comes up. For the extra deck, we have 3 copies of Evil Twin Kisikil. I think you need to max out on both of them. I've seen players play less copies of either or both, but I just don't think that's worth it because I even play cards like Pot of Avarice in the deck to make sure I don't run out of monsters, and if you have just 1 in the extra deck left, you are able to play because 1 brings out the other, so I think this is what you need to be doing. And Kisikil is the one that gets you more cards when you special summon it while you have Lila on the field, so she draws you a card. And of course we have 3 copies of Lila, which is the disruption. She pops a card when summoned while Kisikil is on the field. So yeah, these 2 cards, you're going to be using those 2 effects like nothing else in any other deck. You're going to be spamming them during your own turn, during your opponent's turn. You can use them with their own effects because if you don't have another one, you can just bring back from the graveyard. And then if you use Sunny, then you can bring both of them back, and then you get both of their effects, and then Mask Arena comes in when you are able to link away one of them, and then during the next turn, you can use the one that was kept on the field to bring back the one you linked away and get the effect again. So you see where this is going. This is basically a loop type of deck that just keeps using those effects to try to outgrind summon your opponent by drawing cards yourself and destroying your opponent's board. We have 3 copies of Evil Twins Trouble Sunny. Now, this card basically fixed the biggest issue of the deck, which was that it lacked damage. The deck was very consistent, the deck had a lot of ways to get advantage, but it could just not close out games fast enough before your opponent found the out they needed to break the loop and basically go for game. This card is a 3300 attacker that just basically lets you go for game in less than 3 turns. So it's very easy to summon because it's a link 4 that requires 2+ monsters, including an Evil Twin monster. So 99% of the time you're going to be using the 2 link monsters, Kisikil and Lila, to summon this, and it has a quick effect that you can tribute it to special summon both those monsters from the graveyard, so you get both of their effects. But its second effect, it's even more amazing because if it's in the graveyard, you can banish it, and then you send an Evil Twin monster from your deck, field, or graveyard to the deck or your hand to the graveyard, and then you basically send a card from the field to the graveyard. This is a non-targeting removal. It deals with Dragoon, which is the most important thing because this deck did not have a way to deal with Dragoon 4 unless you had the Evil Twin boss monster with 4400 attack points on the field. So yeah, this card just gives the deck so many options and so many outs to cards that it did not have before, and I think you absolutely have to max it out because it's a card that you're not going to be recycling with your Pot of Avarice because you're going to be banishing this card from the graveyard for the second effect pretty much every single time. So this is why you need to max it out in order to be able to go for it, because Avarice is going to put back the link 2s in the extra deck. You're going to summon both of them and then summon another Sunny from your extra deck, so you need to max this out. For the rest of the link monsters, we have 1 copy of Masquerena. This is mainly sometimes with Gamma, sometimes even with Exceed. Yes, rank 4s are not always the answer against certain matchups. Some rank 4s I play in here are just not the best ones just because I do not have room fit in Tornado Dragon and others, things like that. So maybe against control matchups, it's much better to summon Masquerena and go for a Unicorn. So yeah, this is why this card is here. We have 2 Nightmares, Phoenix and Unicorn. These cards are also Feint monsters, which is really good because you can summon them even under Evil Twins restrictions. So this is really good. And Unicorn, of course, with Masquerena is overly bonkers. 1 Underworld Goddess of the Closed War. This is another Feint monster you can summon under the Evil Twins restriction, and it's very easy to summon just because this deck spams so much. Even with Masquerena, you can summon this during your opponent's turn, and some decks have trouble dealing with this card. So yeah, I think it's very, very cool playing it, and just being able to play a card like this in a deck that has actual synergy with it. And for the Xyz monsters, we play 1 copy of Baguska. I already mentioned that this deck does not care even if it plays under Baguska, just because all of its plays after its normal summon, they are link monsters, so you can just do them freely under this card, and this card is a nightmare against certain matchups. And we have 1 copy of Dweller because this is another auto-win button against certain decks. You can play Tornado Dragon if you want, but I just think that it comes up way less often than these two, so this is why I have Masquerade and Unicorn deal with back row. You even have Present to be able to deal with that, and Lila popping cards. So yeah, this is why I think that Tornado Dragon is not really necessary, but of course, if you think that you're playing in a format where a lot of people are playing control decks, then of course you can play it in your excerpt. So yep, that's the deck, guys. I think that this deck has just become a decent tier 2.5 deck, maybe even better, but we'll just have to wait and see if more people decide to play this. But I think always a deck that has the tools to go second, going first, all those 1-card combos and main deck, all those cards to deal with format, it's always going to be a decent deck. So yeah, I can't wait to see if people actually enjoy playing this deck and find success with it, because I am enjoying playing it, I always did, and I'm just happy that the deck is finally complete and able to do all that stuff. So yep, that's the deck, guys. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our upcoming content, and we'll see you next time.